think yes. Okay. Um, Hello, viewers. Today we are recording an episode for this podcast where we'll be talking about a show, a sitcom rather, which is very close to me and to my guest. Um, so before going any further, let me just introduce my guest, and then we'll talk more about the show and what it means or signifies to us. So my guest today is Alex Thomas. He was, I believe, one of my first flatmates in Leicester, and he is a historian by training. He's an academic historian by training, but today we won't be talking about his academic achievements. We'll be talking about a show, as I just said, that is very special to both of us, called The Peep Show. Well, the isn't in the name, called Peep Show. And yeah, so we'll just be discussing what Peep Show means to us, why it is still such a cultural phenomenon, and how often in real life, in our real lives, we find ourselves in situations that remind us so much of situations or scenes or arrangements from the Peep Show, and how we often, in those situations, tend to think what the characters from the show would do, and we just like have a good laugh. All right, okay, Alex, welcome.
Thank you.
So
Thanks
to
for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So to begin, let me ask you about how you first got acquainted with Peep Show. Like, I'm guessing the first season came out in 2002 or three.
It
You
was 2003, the first season, but I didn't watch it at that point.
Yeah,
I would have been a bit too young probably to
yeah,
appreciate it. I would have been 10 at the time.
yeah.
But the first series or season, if you like, that I remember watching as it was broadcast on TV was the sixth one. So that's relatively late in the show's run. I think there are only 9 series of it. But then, of course, I got more and more into it in the subsequent years because it's something that's broadcast or rebroadcast a lot on British TV on certain channels late at night. If you turn the TV on, there's a good chance there'll be an old episode of Peep Show.
Yeah.
And then plus it's available on various streaming platforms, including Netflix,
Right.
which I think has really helped the show's success
Right.
in more recent years. It's, got a lot of people into it who might not have seen it before, and people from
Right.
around the world as well.
So you say that the first season that you watched as it was being broadcast was the sixth season, but I'm guessing before the sixth season came out, you had time to watch parts of the first 5 seasons.
I think I was aware of it before that. I think I'd seen adverts for it, and I'd watched That Michelin Web Look, which is another series by the 2 main actors from Peep Show.
Sketch show,
it's
yeah.
a sketch show rather than a sitcom. So yeah, I was aware of it before that, but then I only properly started watching it, I think, series 6, which is the one with Elena.
Yeah, yeah. So that's after Dobby is in. Yeah, that's after like the Dobby character has been introduced, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember there was a scene where Mark says to Jeremy, "Why are you sweating it, dude? Just ask her out, like I asked out Dobby." And then Jeremy says, "Just because for the first time in your life you have managed to successfully arrange a date with a woman doesn't make you. I can't remember what the next word was, but so if you were asked to put Peep Show in a particular genre, what genre would that be? Is there such a genre that could sort of fit it? Like, is it drama? Is it comedy? It's not always funny. It's sometimes very tragic and also like
Yeah.
tragicomic in certain ways. And like of course, whenever people like us or any viewer for that matter relates to a long running TV show, it is often the case that they relate to certain characters or the situations that a certain character or certain characters find themselves in over and over again. But with Peep Show, that is hard to do because one moment you're maybe sympathizing with the Jeremy character who isn't supposed to be very like very academically bright or very I was gonna say young and full of cum, but that would that wouldn't translate so well without context. So um, and say some of the moment you could very well be sympathizing with, I don't know, someone very random like Big Mad Andy, or Angus even. I mean, these are cameo characters, obviously. So if you were to like answer this genre question, do you think there is an answer?
So it's conventionally described as a sitcom, but that doesn't really
Yeah,
convey it, does it? Because it is so different from other sitcoms because of
yeah,
how it's shot, which is, for anyone who
yeah,
hasn't seen it, it's entirely shot through point of view shots, and you can hear the thoughts, the internal monologue of the two main
yeah,
characters.
yeah.
As you say, it is very dark and tragicomic.
Hmm.
Um, and in terms of characters that we relate to, I think everyone's got a bit of Mark and a bit of Jeremy, the two main characters in them. And I think the
Hmm.
secret to life is to not be too much like one or the other,
Yeah.
because they're both terrible people in different ways.
No, but I mean, why should it be called a sitcom though? I mean, I can understand the etymology of the term sitcom. This isn't situational comedy. Like there are lots of comic elements or comic parts of the series that are funny, not because of the situation, but because you are sort of connecting yourself to, I don't know, some reference they're making or some like a punchline. Like there was a scene, which I'm sure you remember, where Mark is trying to force Dobby to say that she doesn't want to move in with him, and his internal monologue is going, and then she will do this, and then I win. And he realizes that this victory or this win isn't going to mean much for him because emotionally he is invested in like living together with Dobby, but that's just not happening. This isn't situational comedy. Situational comedy is when you understand a joke because of something that has just happened in most cases, like because of the situation, like
Mm.
definitionally. So, is there any other kind of comedy that we could label it as other than sitcom?
Well, I think the term sitcom has become a very broad term, which
Broad,
basically
yeah.
just means like any comedy that's um, acted with a set group of characters, as opposed to like a sketch show where each sketch is a different scene,
Yeah.
or as opposed to say stand-up comedy where it's someone not in a persona, it's just someone
Yeah.
telling jokes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's so unlike anything else. It's difficult to pin down what else you might call it.
Right. Right. And so when your sort of, let's say, love story with Peep Show was first beginning, could you see yourself as one of the characters? Like, was that how it first began? I mean, I'm guessing when you first started watching season six, you had no idea what season seven was going to bring you, obviously, or what season eight, season nine, for that matter, were going to bring you. So, so season six, let me remember. So, when you start watching season six, the character Elena seems very normal, right? Until it turns out that she is being like duplicitous and she, she has a long-term lover and all that. And so I mean, I don't know, like when you are watching an episode of say season six in this case, and you know from before that the main two characters are not moral universally, like they're almost always amoral, and they're acting in their own self-interest, and sometimes not even that, they're just acting stupidly. And often lots of people, I mean, a lot of my British friends who haven't seen Peep Show often say to me that they have heard that it's very cringy, and
Yeah.
that's why so we'll get to the cringe point later. But so yeah, so when you first started watching it, how did your sort of connection with the show first begin?
Um, it's difficult to remember because this was such a long time ago for me. But I feel like, I didn't necessarily um, fall in love with the show straight away. It's the sort of thing where I think it really rewards rewatching. The more times you see it, the more you appreciate
Mm-hmm.
um, the humor, and there's always things which you miss the first time around. Like I've seen the whole thing so many times now, but I still sometimes notice little jokes or lines that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
pick up on previous occasions. So I think it does reward like binging and rewatching. And also there's this kind of strong online community of Peep Show
Yeah.
fandom, which is developed particularly on Facebook.
Yeah.
Um, various Facebook groups and pages where people post like memes based on Peep Show. So in that sense, I think it is something where the more times you've seen it, it almost improves with age, like a fine wine.
Like, yeah. Yeah, I get that. But the thing is, like, when season 6 was first airing, I don't think those Facebook groups or pages existed, right? Season 6 must have
No,
been what,
probably not.
2008? 2000?
Yeah,
No. 2000,
something like
2009, 2009, 2010, at least. Okay, no, Facebook did exist. Yeah. And I think all of us did have
yeah, it
Facebook
did.
accounts, but we weren't exactly active enough to create memes or appreciate online humor that way. So coming on to the cringe factor, I have never found it cringe, to be honest. Never. I've only
Really?
found it funny. But yeah, I mean, when people complain to me that it is very cringy, like, the harder I think, the less convinced I become that it can be called as it can be sort of labeled as cringe comedy. Like, there are scenes, like a handful of them that I can think of, which are a bit cringy, like when Mark urinates in that into that broth while working at that Mexican restaurant, or when who was it, Daryl, like the racist guy, throws
Yeah.
stones throws stones at Sophie's window, or when again Mark urinates into someone's drawer. uh, like these sorts of
Not
things. But
piss.
but but yeah. So I mean, what is your take on the cringe, on the accusation that Peep Show is quite cringy, or might appear as such to someone who is, let's say, watching it for the first time right now?
I think it is massively cringy, and
Is it though? Okay.
that's not an accusation as you call it. You know, I think it is supposed to be that. It's not necessarily like a bad thing. But the scene that I always think of as being maybe the cringiest is, I think in season 1 or 2, when Mark leaves that phone message to Sophie and ends up singing, and then I go and spoil it all.
By saying
But I
something
do think,
stupid like "I like you."
yeah,
Yeah.
I do think that if you watch it multiple times because you know what's coming, you kind of become a bit immune to the cringy aspects of it.
Wait, what's coming? That's cringy. I mean, she is getting together with Jeff or something, right?
Just that, like him leaving that phone message.
Yeah, but is it cringy though? Isn't it just like
Pretty
romantic in a
cringy.
naive way, or romantic in a naive way? Like, it's not romantic in a proper way. I'm not gonna say that, but I don't
Because
know.
the behavior an oddball. But the best part of that scene is you can see Jeremy's
Yeah,
reaction to
he's
it as he goes, but it goes
exactly.
wrong, and you
When
can see his face.
that is quite true. Like, he is disinterested at first, like he's lying on the couch, and then he can't help but sort of
Yeah.
be interested. And yeah, I remember that scene quite well. And to be honest, like, there was this one time when I mean, this shouldn't keep happening, but there was one time when I was thinking about doing something like that myself to a girl I liked, but then I was like, she won't get this joke, she will just think I'm being weird. And yeah, yeah, that. And there was this other scene also with Sophie in one of the early, what was this, season 2 or season 3, maybe season 2 as well, when Mark says to Sophie something along the lines of, "Yeah, yes, I like you, and if you can't handle that, fuck off."
Yeah.
And again, I wanted to emulate that in real life, but then I thought, what if the
Yeah,
person I'm
that's
going to,
dangerous to someone who doesn't understand the reference.
yeah. So just staying on this topic of like the nature of the show in general, like, we can get into some more specifics later on. Would you say there is something about the fact that there is so much pessimism and despair throughout, like, all the seasons? Do you think there is something about that makes it so much relatable to young adults, or like
Yeah,
people in the 20s, people in the people who are just leaving university and are thinking about joining the workforce, and are maybe not getting their dream jobs or whatever? Yeah.
yeah, I think it is quite relatable in that sense. It doesn't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
in the way that like maybe American comedies have a
Mm-hmm.
tendency to do, where things always just work out in the end,
Mm-hmm.
because they never work out in Peep Show, do they? And that's more truthful to real life. Um,
That is
and yeah, I
true.
think a
Yeah.
lot of people, for good reason, are quite cynical at the moment about the world, let's say. And yeah, Peep Show is a very cynical show
Yeah.
um, about human nature and
Yeah.
society, really. So yeah, I think that
Yeah.
does, people relate to that.
Would you reckon? I mean, do you reckon that's an age thing? Like, if you were discovering Peep Show for the first time when you were, I don't know, 51, do you think your reaction to it will be completely different?
It's hard to say. I guess it depends on how cynical a 51-year-old you would be.
No,
Um,
I mean, do you know people of that sort of age group who are Peep Show fans?
yeah, I mean, there's this kind of stereotype that Peep Show fans are kind of young people at the moment, as you alluded to, like people in their 20s,
Mm-hmm.
which is definitely true. A lot of people in that kind of age range discover it through Netflix and streaming. But like it first came on TV in 2003.
Yeah,
So like 20 years ago
that
almost.
is true. Yeah.
And so
So
like
if
the show's original audience now, I guess the target audience, you might say, was people around the same age as
yeah,
Mark and Jez, so like Gen X, uh, who are people in their 40s now.
yeah, at least,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. And also, I mean, the one thing I feel very strongly about is if there is a show where things not only like work fine at the end, but if things keep working well every now and then, that upsets me because I feel like real life is much more chaotic and complex than that.
Mhm.
And Peep Show sort of accounts for that, takes that into account, and you see that. I mean, you just said that things don't work like perfectly well at the end, but things are never tickety boo
Mm.
in Peep Show. Like, I mean, I would be hard pressed to find a situation from any of the 9 seasons when you could say that both of them are happy and content. And like, even when there was a scene, there was, which season was it? When Mark interviews for um, this history walk job,
Yeah.
and he knows he's gonna like it, but he's still very pessimistic about whether he should actually do it. And then his girl, well, then Dobby says to him that says exactly this: like, the only reason you're scared is because you think you'll like it. And what does it say?
It's
Something
like
about
you're scared it'll make you happy, and then I can't
it will
remember
be
exactly.
it will make you happy and then it will end and you will be miserable or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So
Which is
I mean,
yeah.
do you think it is this? I mean, we were talking about a very similar question just now. Like, I mean, of course, things don't work well at the end, but this fact that they never work well, is it something that attracts so many young viewers? But having said that, I mean, as I was saying just now, like, I know lots of young people of my age from the UK who have never watched the Peep Show and
Mm.
who do enjoy comedies, both British and American, that end well and that end well. Sorry, end well sounds like a writing thing, like it ended well and like the writing was good at the end. But like that end on a positive note.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. You can think of something like, let's say, well, The Big Bang Theory could be an example, of course. Um, I can't exactly remember how Parks and Rec ended, but like things like that. So yeah, so is it the constant lack of hope, uh, the main pulling factor for people of our age group?
Um, I mean that's a bit of a depressing
Yeah,
idea if that is the
yeah,
reason people like it. I don't think it's quite that extreme. I think it's more of a case that yeah, it's very relatable, and it's probably truer to real life than a lot of these more happy ending sitcoms.
right, right.
Um, and yeah, as you say, the main characters, um, they are happy for only very fleeting moments in the show, and you know that it's not going to last, and that it's all going to either be snatched away from them or it's going to implode because of something that they do. Because that's the other part of it is like generally, or a lot of the time, when things go wrong for these characters, it is their fault. They do self-sabotage. So, it's not
With a
like they're totally blameless
few,
victims.
with
They
with a
do like
few
nasty
exceptions.
manipulative
Yeah,
things, and then it blows up in their face, and they kind of
yeah,
deserve it. So
that is quite true. That is quite true. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I can accept that. And also, I mean, just getting a bit deep into the anatomy of the characters in the show. Do you think the show would have benefited from having a female POV, a female point of view? Well, POV is the wrong word here. Like as you mentioned earlier, like the show thrives on these two, well, not parallel streams of internal monologues, but these two streams of internal monologues, one for Mark and one for Jeremy. But there are no internal monologues for any of the recurring female characters, be
mm,
it Big Suze, be it Sophie, be it, what are the other recurring female characters? Well, a bit
Nancy,
Nancy,
Dobby.
really? Well, yeah, Dobby is a good example. I mean, do you think that hinders the appeal of the show a little bit? I mean, it's hard to imagine that the show could be any more appealing, but maybe it would have been if there was a Dobby, if there was like an internal monologue stream for Dobby in at least, I don't know, season 7 or 8, or like the Christmas dinner season. Which one was it? But yeah,
Yeah, I think that's 7. I think it would be a very different show if it did have a female lead with internal monologue. But I think I sent to you the other week that in one of the DVD special features,
yeah,
um, they actually experimented with doing a few
Sophie.
scenes from Sophie's point of view and giving her the internal monologue. So yeah, they did kind of experiment with that, I guess. But if they'd done that through the whole thing, it would be a totally different show. And I think a big part of it is that it
Right,
is the point of view specifically of these two men.
right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and like briefly, can we talk about Facebook for for a minute? Like you mentioned earlier that um, the when you first started watching Peep Show, well, maybe not exactly then, but later on, there was this online community
Mhm.
on Facebook. There were many groups, many pages, many profiles, many. I mean, Facebook keeps changing these terms, obviously. Um, so, and I know that you were involved with one of those groups for like a bit of time. So, like, A, what was your experience with that group? And B, do you think this thing? I mean, where did this online community, let's say, engagement come from? I'm pretty sure it didn't come out of a vacuum, like, or was it just like a fact of life, not a fact of life, like what I'm trying to say. So like, for example, right now, there are lots of TV shows that have very thriving and engaging online communities. Let's say Rick and Morty, The Simpsons, Friends, Peep Show, The Thick of It, like you name it, like almost any comedy show that one can think of that has been successful over a long period of time has a very thriving online fan base. So is it just a corollary of the fact that as we moved into the 2010s, more and more people started getting started having various kinds of online presence, or is it something deeper than that?
Um, I think it's another way to engage with something that you enjoy, isn't it? Is to take part in these
Right.
online fan communities. And with something like Peep Show in particular, it's such a quotable show. It's so well written. Like, virtually every line is well written or
Yeah.
potentially funny in some way. And that quotability really allows scenes and lines from Peep Show to be reused and reapplied in different contexts. And that's largely what happens in
Right.
these online groups, is that people take quotes or scenes and reapply them to different contexts. You see it a lot with The Simpsons as well, because that is, I think, a similar quality of writing and quotability.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you mentioned, I have been involved in a few of these groups. I'm a moderator of 2 Facebook groups. And I also used to be involved in a page called Dobby Club, which posts a lot of Peep Show memes mostly. And that gained a large fan base. But yeah, it's a way of re-engaging with the show, but beyond just kind of rewatching it endlessly.
Right.
And it's a way of actively engaging with it, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah.
making knowing jokes and references to other people that will get them. There's something
As I have.
enjoyable about
Yeah.
that.
Did you see the name of the meeting room on Zoom?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
appreciate that.
only reason I changed the Zoom address from where I asked you to meet before
Was
is
to see
like
that.
this morning it suddenly struck me that I can do that. Let me do it. And so no, I mean, yeah. Let me just say something about Dobby Club, and then we can move to a different question. So, but this is not a question. This is just for the viewers to know. Like many years back, I think you sent me a liking request for this page on Facebook. I mean, Facebook used to have this feature where anyone who had a page could request their friends to like that page. Like not like request as in you write a letter or you knock on their door, but request through Facebook. And I didn't think much of it. I just liked it. And then months later, I realized that maybe this is actually a TV show. I thought it was just a, a community for making jokes. And I think the first meme that I properly understood was this meme from, so there was this Ed Sheeran song called Galway Girl. And I know, I mean, many of my Irish friends get very upset when Galway Girl is just referred to as an Ed Sheeran song, because there is another Galway Girl song that has been in the Irish tradition going back centuries, and it used to be played at weddings and stuff. But anyway, so there was this Ed Sheeran song called Galway Girl, and I think someone posted a meme on that Facebook page, Dobby Club, which was which was it? Oh yeah, yeah. So in the video of Galway Girl, it shows the Saoirse Ronan character dancing with the Ed Sheeran character, but you don't see the Ed Sheeran character's face until the very end. And so there was a scene from Mark's birthday party where Mark is trying to have a dance with Saz, and it's going horribly. And he goes another drink, and she goes, "Yeah, fill her up, babe," or something. And so yeah, so the meme was this video with Saoirse Ronan's face juxtaposed onto Saz's face. And I was like, okay, there is a video. So that must mean there is a TV series corresponding to this whole group. And that's how I first discovered it. And out of my own interest, I like pirated the first few seasons because I didn't have Netflix back then. And I just fell in love with it. And without any context, like no one was telling me this is funny because so and so happened in the like popular culture or whatever. Yeah, so this was just a comment. The question that I want to go to next is how we find Peep Show or scenes, jokes, lines, situations from Peep Show relevant or useful, or even let's say significant in our own lives. So, I mean, can you shed some light on how that works for you? And then maybe I can talk a bit about how that works for me. And of course, it's entirely up to you how like granular you want your anecdotes to be. You can make them very vague, or you can just go very granular. Like you can name names or name cities or whatever, or not. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when you've watched it as many times as I have, and as many times as you have,
Yeah.
you do start to think in terms of the show quite a lot. You start to
Yeah.
connect things that happen in your own life to things from the show. And if you have friends that have seen it a lot as well, then you can make those references to them, and it almost becomes a shorthand for it. You know, making a joke or like explaining a situation by alluding to something that happened in the show, and using a line from the show. I mean, the example that would come to mind would be we were going to record this, was it last week or the week before, but then I was ill, and then I think you were making jokes to do with like Gerard, the character who's ill all the time in Peep Show, sickly Gerard, with his stomach acid levels playing up. So it's that sort of thing. I think when we talked earlier about it being very relatable because of how pessimistic it is, another side of that relatability is that you make those connections to your own life. And I
Yeah.
think more so with Peep Show than any other show I've seen is it kind of offers those connections, and that it's a new way of again of engaging with it and enjoying it, I
Yeah.
think.
No, but in this case, this was between you and someone else. In this case, that someone else was me. But I'm talking about situations where there is no other person involved. It's just you, and you are in a bit of a sticky situation, and you suddenly realize, this reminds me of this scene or this situation from the Peep Show when like this happened to Mark or Jazz, and then you think that your situation is funny, but it could very well be the case that your situation is actually very tragic, or like you're very anxious about a job interview or something, and you're suddenly thinking of like, I've been called in for a third interview at baths, bathrooms, and fittings, or something silly like that. Like, does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, I can't come up with any examples off the top of
Right.
my head. Do you have
Yeah, many,
situations
many,
like that?
many, many, many. Like, as I was telling you the last time we spoke privately, like every time I'm sad and I'm having a good meal, I think, I wonder if anyone's ever been this sad while having, then insert the name of the meal, like while having, I don't know, well, not having while having champagne. While having champagne is the original line, but that or okay, I hope the person involved in this case doesn't watch this. So I'm at a postdoc position right now, and there is someone else in my department uh, who, for some reason, got a better deal in terms of, well, not a better deal in terms of money. Like they were asked to be somewhere, and I thought I deserved to be there as well, but I wasn't asked. And I was thinking, like, I do everything society demands, and you get the reference, yeah.
Yeah.
So that, or yeah. So like things like that, and I mean, yeah, it happens to me quite a lot, especially when I'm alone and not depressed or lonely, but say I'm alone and I'm, say, dejected for some reason. And that sense of dejection could go away, I don't know, in a couple of hours. But during those 2 3 hours, I will probably think of quite a few scenes from the Peep Show. I'd say, as I said, mostly sometimes of, like, quite often with food, uh, like, say, chain eating roasts and things like that. So yeah, so this never happens to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, so one that if ever anything goes wrong in any
Yeah.
sense, I often find myself thinking this is the worst thing to happen to anyone ever. That's quite a widely applicable little
Yeah,
quote.
yeah.
But yeah, as you say, it's not even necessarily something that where you say out loud to someone,
Yes,
a
yes. You
friend.
just
It's like
think it. You
you
just think
internalize
it, and
these.
you,
Yeah.
yeah. And I have this theory with any comedic output from any culture, basically, that if I am laughing out loud, or if I'm laughing, even when I'm watching it or reading it myself, like by myself, and there is no one around me, that must mean that my brain finds it funny. Like, even if something very, uh, let's say, wrong or tragic was going on in my life, I will still find it funny. I have this thing with, also with Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is this HBO comedy with Larry David, and there are lots of scenes from Curb that I find funny in a similar way. But Curb isn't, well, at least to me, isn't as quotable as a Peep Show. So yeah, so this happens to me quite a lot. Like, of course, if I'm watching something with someone, like, say, if you and I are watching something from the Peep Show, and I think we won't laugh that much if we're watching together, because both of us will know when it is funny and how. We'll be like, yeah, this is funny. But if we were just watching it by ourselves, even when we're not, let's say, visibly smiling, like, our brains would be, like, acknowledging the fact that, yeah, this is funny. And like, moving on to a different question, like, do you think this way, Peep Show, or like comedy written well in general, like not just Peep Show, like it could be any other kind of comedy, um, helps people to, I don't know, cope with, not grief, I don't want to go like that deep, uh, but I mean, comedy helping people cope with sadness, or helping people cope with things that are not comic necessarily. has always been a thing, I would guess. And I would also assume that Peep Show has always had that capability, and we've already spoken about that a little bit. And do you think like Peep Show has that capability more in than, let's say, some other TV shows? Like we were talking about The Simpsons a little bit. We were talking about, well, I brought up Parks and Rec, and yes, I mean, can you think of any other show? Like it could be an American show, could be I don't know, a South Korean show, whatever, that to your mind can have a similar effect or can have a similar, let's say, use.
So I think this goes to what we were talking about earlier, in
Yeah,
terms of Peep Show being pessimistic and cynical. And I think for some people that is helpful. If you're having a hard time,
yeah,
you might not necessarily want to see a comedy show where everything is
yeah,
happy and dandy
yeah,
by the end of the episode. You might want to see something where the people you're watching are having a shit time as well, or a worse
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. I think some people probably do, if they're having a hard time, prefer to watch something like wholesome and happy. But I think maybe this is like this kind of British attitude to these things is like, yeah, I'm having a shit time, but these guys that I'm watching, it could be worse, couldn't it? Because look at these
yeah,
idiots.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I would guess that it is very tempting to say that it is an attitude that is very emblematic of the culture at large. But like you are a historian, right? Like of course your specialization is not like your specialization was what, some, wasn't it some tax reforms in ancient Sicily or something
yeah,
like
ancient
that?
Greek and Roman Sicily, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So not much far from
not that related to Peep Show, although obviously Mark does have an interest
business
in
secrets,
ancient history. So
business secrets of the pharaohs.
yeah,
I was gonna say that. I hope your thesis wasn't typed in all caps and published by British London.
yeah, I spelled my name right as on the front as well. So
No, so yeah, the question that I was trying to get at was like this like the thing that you just said. I mean, I thought of it before as well, that this is probably a, a British thing, or a thing, or a feature that is emblematic of people of a certain generation or people of a certain background. Do you think it's that, or is it more individual or more like case by case than that?
yeah, possibly because I mean, when people ask me if there's like any other shows which I consider similar to Peep Show, the one that I always say is an American show is BoJack Horseman,
Bojack.
and it's totally different in lots of ways because that is that's an animated show about a world populated by anthropomorphic animals.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, obviously it's not shot from point of view cameras with voiceovers, but in terms of tone, I think it's very similar in terms of like the darkness and finding comedy in the darkness, and the way that it doesn't, none of its characters are perfectly good people. They're all problematic in some way, and there aren't really conventional happy endings. And the whole message of that show really is that traditional TV sitcoms give you this warped view of like happiness, and that the world doesn't really work like that. Not everyone gets like a convenient happy ending after a half an hour episode. It's more
That is quite
complicated.
true. And well, I have seen a fair bit of BoJack Horseman, but of course, like I'm not exactly a scholar on it. But I would say a key difference between the tone of BoJack Horseman and the tone of Peep Show is that with Peep Show, whenever a character is acting amorally, you get to view the internal struggle of that character at that moment. Whereas I don't think that is the case so much with BoJack Horseman, or with many other, or with other, let's say, um, other shows where like there are no moral characters. A niche example could be Fleabag. So in Fleabag, especially in season one, we have you seen Fleabag?
I've not seen it.
Would it be okay if I said something?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Uh, then I go and ruin it all by giving you a spoiler. so, so yeah, well, so in season one of Fleabag, towards the end, you get to realize that the central character, the what's her name, Phoebe Waller-Bridge character, has did do something terrible before like the timeline of the show began, but you never get to see her internal struggles. Like you get to see
Mm.
her fidgeting over various kinds of significant and not so significant decisions. But if Peep Show was handling something like that, something along the lines of, is this a good idea? Like the characters thinking to themselves if whatever they were going to do was a good idea, would have been a feature. Like I can, like both of us, I'm sure, can think of lots of situations from the Peep Show where there is a character who is about to do something very, very immoral, like when Jess sleeps with Sophie, or when Mark, urinates into that thing, into that pan at that Mexican restaurant, or lots of those situations. In lots of the situations, you see that in the internal monologue. And again, this is a feature. This is only possible because internal monologues exist in this show. You get to hear the characters debating with themselves, or like reasoning with themselves as to whether or not what they're going to do is a good idea, and that is
Yeah.
very relatable. Like for people who are trying to draw inspiration, not inspiration, sorry, people who are trying to find images of their darker selves
Mm.
in like in the characters of Peep Show or any show that they actually like. And I don't think we get that with BoJack Horseman. Like if BoJack Horseman had internal monologues, then yeah, sure, then it would
Mm.
be very, very similar to Peep Show. Do you agree or?
Yeah. It's interesting because, as you say, the internal monologue feature of Peep Show allows us to see how these characters rationalize their bad behavior, their immoral behavior. But at the same time, I don't think Peep Show as a whole really has much of a moralistic take. It
No,
doesn't seem to have like any
no,
grand message. It's not trying to say anything. It's simply
no,
bringing
yeah.
the humor out in that sort of disconnect between the characters' actions and their thoughts. Whereas something like BoJack Horseman, even though it lacks that internal monologue aspect, it definitely has something that it is trying to say, like an overall message and something to say about these issues of morality that it deals with.
Oh, I
But in
see.
that sense,
So,
I'd say Peep Show is more nihilistic. It's saying like,
oh
yeah,
yeah.
these characters are bad people, but it doesn't even particularly like judge them or ask you to judge them. Like they do get their comeuppance quite a lot, but it's not really particularly condemning them. It's just saying it's funny to see these people do these things.
And also, I mean, they do get their comeuppance like every now and then, but also you see situations where, let's say, Jez has been horrible to Mark or has done something truly disgusting, and Mark is like cross with him, and then a few scenes later they are friends again. I mean, they are like speaking normally again, or like if you focus on those later seasons when Mark is obsessed with trying to have Jez moved out. Like there are scenes where, what was that scene, like Jez is back because Super Hands made him stay in the bathroom or something like that, and like Mark is sympathetic towards him. You can see that, but he's also uh, for his own reasons wants Dobby to move in, and then they start playing a game, and Dobby says like, until Jez sorts his shit out, she can like she cannot move in until then. So I mean,
Mhm.
there are lots of those situations. What was the point of this story? There are lots of those situations where you see that the characters are doing the kinds of things that, like, if you did to your friend would probably never speak to you. Well, maybe not never, but like at least for like a good 6 months or whatever.
Mm.
But that almost never occurs in
Yeah,
the Peep Show universe.
I guess in the end, they both do such bad things to each other, and they're both such toxic people in a way. It's almost like they're meant for each other. Like
Hmm.
they kind of have to live together because no one else will have them, because they'll destroy any relationship they ever embark on sooner or later.
Right.
And even
Right.
their other friends, like obviously Jez is friends with Super Hands, who is kind of quite similar to him in some ways, but towards the end he gets like a proper job and becomes
Yes.
like and gets married and becomes like a respectable member of society almost, and Jez never really reforms like that. So by that point even Super Hands isn't really like um
Yeah.
suitable as someone that
That is
Jeremy
true.
could
That is
sort
true.
of
It is
live with.
quite like the journey arc that the Super Hans character goes through is quite remarkable. Like starting from like the absolute filth to what was it? I can move any mountain. Well, it is quite remarkable. And there was a scene in season 9 or season 8, I can't remember. I think it was season 9, um, that shows Jeremy and Mark break into Superhans's home to look for evidence that Superhans was not giving Jeremy his due credit, his due songwriting credit for a particular song. And I was very surprised to see the nature of the house that, or the flat that Superhans was staying in, because I thought it would be like a shithole, but it wasn't. It was quite normal looking. It was quite decent looking, and I think that was a conscious message that the writers of the show, the creators of the show, wanted to pass on. That this character, by some hint of miracle, is now much better than like where he began his
Mm.
journey, like in the sort of timeline of the show. Whereas if you compare the starting point and the ending point of both the main characters, Mark and Jess, you can't really say that. Like at the start of, yeah, the only difference is probably the young and full of cum bit. Uh, like, because quite frankly, and we can maybe now talk a bit more about some like plot points of the Peep Show, and this will not have anything to do with the kind of $2 worth of social commentary that we have been trying to engage ourselves in until now. So, I mean, I would say, like, out of all the heartbreaks and the breakups that the Jeremy character goes through, for some reason, I felt most, well, not connected, or like when he fucks up this thing with Megan and Joe, uh, and when remember, like, that guy goes into this bank to rob the bank, but eventually doesn't rob the bank and just steals some pens. And then, when, like, as that thing is about to happen, Mark and Jess go into this coffee shop, and Joe calls up Jess asking where he is, because he is at this location that Jess had,
Yeah,
like,
the
well,
fictional office.
yeah, Jess had sort of lyingly said to him was his office. And when during that phone call, Joe says to Jazz that you aren't really a life, what is it, life coach? Yeah,
Yeah,
that
life
you aren't
coach.
exactly, like, when he calls out his bluff, I felt so bad, but it was so strange because, like, of course, like, the character had it coming,
Yeah.
like, he deserved it. And so, yeah, so what, out of all the breakups and the heartbreaks that the Jess character goes through, um, which was the one that you found most, not depressing, or that you found the most, let's say, sad, and
Mm.
why?
Yeah, well, I think that the thing with the Joe situation there, um, is that although he obviously has brought it on himself by making up all these lies, he didn't do it for any malicious reason, did it? He did it out of a sense of insecurity about his own like
That he wasn't young
failure.
and full of cum.
Yeah, he was just trying to make himself seem more impressive.
Yeah.
So when his web of lies falls apart, it's like it's a bit pathetic and sad, but like you do feel sorry for him because he wasn't trying to he lied, but he was doing it out of his own insecurities, not to try and manipulate anyone,
Hmm.
which is often the reason why he might lie.
Which is often the reason that, yeah.
But the ones that where I did feel sorry for him, um,
Let me guess. Let
there's
me
a bit
guess.
when
Okay.
there's all the stuff to do with Big Sue's earlier on, isn't
Yeah.
there? Where he again seems quite pathetic when he's sort of crying by the church and ends up punching Stu the monk, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And also when he's going to marry Nancy, and
Yeah.
Mark and Superhands make up that story about
Yeah.
Nancy. He does have a bit of a breakdown there.
Everything's turned from gold to shit.
Yeah,
I
that's a good
think
line.
I think that's a great line. That's a great
Yeah,
great line. Yeah.
yeah, I think I use
Um,
that all the time in my own thoughts.
yeah, you said when Burnley got relegated, you
Yeah.
used that line with your friend. Like, that's so perfect. I mean, I use some other kinds of lines, like, in my sort of own world. Like, yesterday, so I live in Bielefeld, so we went to a nearby city called Paderborn to hear a very renowned mathematician give a talk. And then that talk was in German. I didn't realize it would be in German. So I felt a bit like what Mark and Jess felt when they went to watch that play. And then I was drinking lots of fruit juice, like as you can see, and my constant fear was, when will it start to degenerate? I still have like one full bottle that is
Well,
that I
did it
haven't opened yet.
degenerate? Do these mass conferences frequently degenerate?
Yeah. No, so what I was going to say was, do you think the breakup with Nancy was more, I don't know. I mean, for some reason, I think that was the, actually, no. I mean, come to think of it, I feel like all of Jez's relationships uh, did reach that point where the viewer could see very clearly that the viewer could see that Jez had very clearly been emotionally attached to the
Mm.
girl. Like, oh, we could see that with Nancy, even though she was, of course, exploiting him. We could see that with Elena, of course. We could see that with Tony, even. Uh, and I mean, that scene in season 1 or season 2, when Jez comes into the flat and there's this internal monologue going where he is thinking, where he's imagining that he has just won a Grammy and is thanking people, and he hears some music coming out of his room and he thinks that Mark is listening to his music, and he opens the door and he sees that Mark is there laughing at his music with Tony, and he feels a bit sad there. But like, when I think of it, like when I first watched that season, and of course I didn't know what the subsequent seasons was going to bring me. I felt very sad for Jeremy, even though I thought that track was shit. Like,
Yeah, it's the
I,
betrayal, isn't it? The betrayal, I
exactly,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Betrayal is quite a constant theme throughout Peep Show, wouldn't you
Yeah, they
say?
betray each other all the time, don't they?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say like betrayal is a very important or a very common part of any friendship. I mean, I've never even had the opportunity to betray my friends that often,
Yeah.
that often, or with that kind of efficacy. So, I mean, I mean, why do you think the betrayal translates so well into like acceptability among viewers?
How do you mean acceptability?
Like when we watch them betray each other, we
Hmm.
don't feel disgusted. We just think it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because they're both as bad as each other, because they do betray each other all the time.
Hmm.
Um, it's like, well, he deserved it, didn't it, because of this other thing he did at some other point in the show.
That's a good point. Like if one of them was the overtly moral character, then yeah, then I think we would have been disgusted,
Yeah.
I guess. And it would have been a very one-sided like narration. Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And also like I think yeah, okay, so let's do the same with Mark. Which one of Mark's breakups do you think was the most sad?
Um, well, I mean, Dobby is probably the one that
Mm-hmm.
affects him the most, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
he, he goes a bit insane after that million text
Yeah.
mark.
Yeah.
But then, I don't really, because of how sort of insane he gets over it, then you kind of lose sympathy, don't you? And at
Mhm.
first, it's like, well, it kind of Jeremy sabotaged his and Dobby's relationship basically, and you do feel sorry for him. But then,
Is that true though? Like he didn't do much. He just
well,
found
he
out
turns
about
up
his
on that
on
holiday,
that date,
that picnic,
on
and
that.
kind of that's the sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back. But
I
I
was
guess
gonna
it's
say
kind of
that.
like a doomed relationship anyway. So
But if you recall that scene, the thing that the straw that does break the camel's back in that scene is that text from Simon. What part of ex-boyfriend does he not understand? And that text from Simon was what ends it with Dobby in that scene. And I
yeah,
think we don't get to see Dobby until the very last season,
yeah,
right?
um,
Like the
yeah. I think
like,
she was always
I'm
probably
sorry.
likely
When I
to
say
go
we
to
don't
New
get to,
York.
yeah, but yeah, when I say we don't get to see Dobby, I say we don't get to see Dobby from that point until,
Yeah,
uh,
until she
like
comes
from
back
that
for
point until the
season
end of the
one.
show, we only see her once. No, yeah, I think for some reason with Mark's romances, it is very noticeable that anything he touches turns to shit. So the one relationship, it wasn't even a relationship. It didn't even have the time to blossom into a relationship by the time it ended. That I feel sorry for was the one with Stephanie. Remember the girl he meets on that MBA course? Because
Mhm.
we didn't get to see the shit bits. We just saw a bit of
Yeah.
like we just saw them exchanging like pleasantries, and then that note falls out and he leaves her. Whereas with Sophie, like of course, like oh yeah, speaking of cringe, like that wedding scene, yeah, that is proper cringe. I mean, I will, yeah, I can see that. Like, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like for me, I feel like when I am in situations like that, like of course I'm not peeing in a church or like putting on a hat full of vomit. But whenever I'm in a situation where like self pity or self loathing is very easy to get into, I don't like I don't get into pitying myself because there is always something from Peep Show that comes up that sort of like comes into my brain, and I just like it just brings a smile to my face. I would say. Do you think it happens the same? Like we have already touched on this. Like, do you think it happens to you as well in your own like dark moments? Of course, you don't have to give examples, but like just on a yes or no.
But I'd like to think I'm not quite as self-pitying as the two main characters, because they do spend a lot
Right,
of time
right.
pitying themselves, don't they?
That is true. Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe it's not for me to say.
Right, right, right. No, no, no. I mean, I get that. I get that. Now, what I'm saying is, in situations, I find myself often in situations, or not often. Like there have been situations that I've found myself in where I realized for myself that I could very easily pity myself, and then I didn't pity myself, or I didn't even have the option of pitying myself any further because anymore because there was a scene from the picture that came into my head. I was like, okay, fine, let's watch
No,
this
and you
scene,
didn't
and
want to drop to their level, basically.
yeah, that is a good way of looking at it, I guess. Yeah. One other point, like what do you like this is like a point about, let's say, economics in a way. So we get to see Mark at a stable job at the start of the series, right? He works at JLB, and it is never made clear how Jeremy like earns his living. Like
Um,
you're more of a Peep Show scholar than me, so expand on Jeremy's finances.
so I think basically his mum has given him a substantial amount of money, a nest egg, and like for a large part of the show, he's basically living off that.
Oh, was that
But then
implied? Like
that does run
the
out at one point, doesn't it? But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then he inherits some money or something afterwards, which maybe
Yes, his aunt
helps him.
dies.
Yeah,
The aunt that leaves him Gunny
yeah,
dies, and then he doesn't really get that money, right? Because his mom is with what's his name, the boyfriend,
yeah. The military man. I can't remember
the
his name either.
father of Natalie.
Mr. Potato Head, doesn't someone call him?
Yeah, and I mean, they decide to not give him the full amount, and yeah, there was no, but I'm saying like, so you would say like I remember that nest egg scene. So you
Yeah,
would say that was his source of like
yeah.
not
And I mean, he
income, like
also like leeches off Mark as well, doesn't he? Like he's supposed to be paying Mark rent, but I think a lot of the time he doesn't, and he ends up owing Mark loads of back
that's
rent.
right, that's right, yeah.
And
I
Mark
owe you
probably spends a lot of money on like the food shopping and
sofa.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, I owe you more than £1,000. Like no, Jeremy, you owe me £4,000 exactly. I owe you more than £1,000. I was gonna say, okay, so isn't it made clear from season one that Mark already owns that flat? Like he isn't paying rent to anyone. But we also,
Mm, I'm
because
not
people
sure.
are, because
He
Mark is
definitely
always
owns it
talking about
by one point. He
Jeremy.
definitely mentions that he does own it, but I don't know if it's supposed to be. Maybe it's not made clear whether he owns it from the start or if he um, rents it and then buys it or something.
Yeah, because I remember when he tries to have an affair with Sally, he says on the phone, doesn't he, that he has a foot on the property ladder, something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah. But then of
So
course he's lying to her about what house he actually lives in, isn't he?
That is true. That is
Yeah.
true. I can't have an affair. I'm not French. Uh, no, the reason I bring up him owning the flat because from season one there are rumblings about Jess not paying him rent. So I'm
Mm.
guessing he could have I don't know supplemented or something maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, no, so money wise, and we spoke about this like when we last discussed these questions privately. So money wise, the show begins at the height of New Labour. Well, maybe not at the height of, like, but still like yeah, it's sort of in the heyday of New Labour in some way. So I mean, Mark is doing well. He's making lots of money, and then the 2008 financial crisis comes in. Alan, where do management go, and all that. So, so from 2000, so that is what that is season 7, or
What, when the crash happens?
yeah, when the crash happens,
Um,
because a lot of the
I
Dobby
feel like
stuff
it's
happens.
before that. I
Yeah,
mean,
could
it
be, could be.
definitely it's about maybe about season 5 because it's like the 2008 crash, isn't it? And it is like whichever
Whichever
season.
season was being filmed then, yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you what do you think happens to his finances once the crash happens? Like he tries to write a book and it goes like it doesn't go very well, and I mean, I think quite a few seasons later, or at least quite a few episodes later, he finds that job uh, selling bathroom tiles.
Yeah, and before that, he gets the Mexican restaurant
Mexican restaurant
waiter job.
job.
So he does various things. But yeah, I think this is one of the things that Peep Show is quite unusual with, in a sense, is the way it's so realistic, not just in terms of the way that it's shot point of view, which I think gives it a feeling of realism, but also the way that it reflects like political and economic trends which happen in real life. So yeah, as you say at the start, Mark has this stable job for a loan company during like the economic good times, and then when the crash happened in real life, then JLB credit goes under and Mark loses his job and ends up working these other various things which he might have previously considered below him, like the Mexican restaurant waiter job.
Yeah. No, but in general, would you say he, like the Mark Corrigan character, was written very much in the image of like the right of center, libertarian, money making guy, or was he supposed to be more of like an old school conservative in the British sense?
I think he's kind of a new Labourish guy. Like he's you know he kind of has vaguely leftist ideas on certain social issues. Like he kind of understands when Daryl turns out to be a Nazi, he kind of understands that he can't be friends with him anymore, and that he needs to break that off. But yeah, he's a good reflection of like the new Labour values, I think, in that he sort of believes in meritocracy, doesn't he? He thinks that
like he gets very
he kind
upset
of
when
thinks that he's
Sophie
better than everyone else, and he kind of expects that the world is going to give him something because he's better than everyone else, and because he like works hard, turns up and grinds out at his office job. But then, of course, it doesn't work out like that because the world isn't as like it's not as fair as he thinks it is, and he does lose his job. Right at the moment when he gets that promotion, he ends up losing his job, and he never quite recovers from that. Really, I think that kind of shatters his worldview a little bit, and then gives him a lot of resentment.
No, but when this, I mean, then from this angle, Jeremy would be what, like a far left guy?
I mean, he kind of probably thinks he is, but I don't think he's not that different from Mark really in that sense. Like he has a lot of these leftist aesthetics, doesn't he? Like the Cuban flag in his room and stuff like that. But really,
that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
he's similar to Mark in the sense that he also thinks he's better than everyone else, but in a different way. He thinks he's this like undiscovered musical genius, and that he's bound to. Yeah, he believes in that meritocratic thing as well, because he believes that his musical talents will pay off, and that he's going to be rich and successful any minute now. As soon as he gets his breakthrough in the music industry, that he's going to be this superstar. And then, of course, that doesn't work out for him in the same way that Mark's ambitions don't really work out.
That is, yeah. And what about the other characters? Can we make similar kinds of conclusions about, let's say, Sophie or Jeff or Alan
Well,
or
Alan Johnson is the most interesting in that sense because he is like
yes,
the peak kind of New Labour guy, isn't he?
yeah,
He is the
yeah.
sort of like the macho businessman. He's like everything that Mark wants to be. He wants to have that kind of level of bravado and success and confidence. And
Show
there's
me
that
a
whole
show
episode
me a
where he tries to become Alan Johnson and like, grows a little mustache and everything.
That's true. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Show me a good loser and I will show you a loser.
Yeah, like the hyper individualistic, hyper capitalist, um, masculine, hyper masculine
No,
guy.
but it is interesting because if you follow the sort of journey arc of the Jeremy character, Ben was probably his Alan in
Yeah.
a way. In a way, and the Ben character doesn't get talked about, or well, he gets talked about a little bit thanks to you guys at Derby Club. I remember when the Dominic Cummings episode was blowing up, like him driving to Durham from London. Someone found out that he looked a bit like Ben.
Yeah.
And, uh, yeah, like
Ben was good.
the infection never begins. No, so would you say like there are some of these, like these are, what's the word, like deliberately or consciously placed parallels, like Ben with Alan, let's say, I don't know, Sophie with Big Suze, and then later on Elena with, sorry, Dobby with Elena. Like if you look at, if you compare the like journey arcs of the Mark and Jeremy characters, I mean, I had never, like before mentioning it just now, I had never thought of the Ben character in Jeremy's life being like an image of the Alan character in Mark's life.
Well, I would
Well,
say that actually it's more like Superhands is to Jeremy what Alan Johnson is to Mark, in the sense that
ah,
it's his friend that he kind of looks up to a lot and basically wants to be. He kind of represents. He represents what Jeremy wants to be in terms of this like super confident musician who doesn't give a shit. But the thing
mhm.
is, it's kind of implied that Superhands actually does have some musical talent, whereas Jeremy doesn't really.
Is that implied? I don't.
I mean, I think like there's that one where they go down to Dartmouth and
Uh-huh.
Superhands has basically been invited into this band Executioner's Bong,
Yeah.
whereas Jez basically has to sort of bargain his way in
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
Superhands says,
Yeah,
"I
but
don't think you'll get in on talent, mate."
no, but was the song that good? And I can't quite remember. One other thing I wanted to ask you, like just as a, I don't know, as something to speculate over. So we were talking about New Labour and the fact that, like in retrospect, it seems to us, or me at least, that the fact that Peep Show began its first season in 2003 is something that influences how the like seasons that happen later go. So if instead of starting in 2003, had Peep Show begun in, I don't know, 1984, like in during the times of like high Thatcherism, do you think one could have written a show exactly like that and made it funny, or do you think these underlying economic factors that are present in the society at large were always going to be important factors that would sort of contribute towards the relatability of the show? Like, of course, like one could have written something as risque as Peep Show in like 80s Britain, I'm guessing. Like, I mean, Monty Python came out in the 70s, right, for the first time. Like brave artists will always be iconoclastic, and they can like try their hand at lots of things. But like, do you think economics of the country at large or the society at large plays like a very major role in how people enjoy or did enjoy Peep Show?
Yeah, I think it definitely could have happened in the 80s. I don't think
Okay.
that the sort of the zeitgeist of the 80s, I don't think it was that different from like the sort of New Labour cultural values. Like, I mean, Blairism isn't that different from the Thatcherism, really. So I think it could have happened in the 80s. It would have looked different, but it would have reflected a lot of the issues of the day. And yeah, I think it could have worked.
Right. I don't. Yeah.
But I mean, it is difficult to imagine because, like, as it is, especially when you watch the early episodes, it is so naughty, isn't it? Everything looks very naughty, and all the cultural references are very naughty.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really think of anything particularly technological that gets referenced or that gets used as a major plot point or a plot ticket in those early seasons. What I'm trying to say is, like, if there were such things, then one could say that, well, this couldn't have worked in 1984 or whatever. But still, you're right. It does feel very much like you're in the early part of the century, in terms of like the references to popular bands, references to shows, and yeah, I mean, I don't know, but maybe the reason I'm bringing up this question has got to do with the timelessness or the purported timelessness of any piece of comedy. Like, we can still enjoy Monty Python, but maybe we can't enjoy some of the Ealing comedies because of some kinds of, like, racially charged language that were considered like canon fodder for comedy in the 50s and in the 60s, but are not considered as such anymore. There are lots of such examples, like, if you know what I mean, like things that were considered risque but funny at some point of time and are now just considered unacceptable or like beyond the pale. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So are you saying, do you think that will happen to
Yeah.
I don't think it will. Like, there's a few things in the show, a few lines which would be controversial if they were made now, or more controversial. But overall, I don't think it's too objectionable.
Yeah. Now, if Peep Show were to be made now, I think, well, it for sure couldn't be made. Well, I mean, if one tried to write something exactly like the Peep Show in modern day America, they wouldn't be able to do it. Like, no studio would be willing to finance it because of the risque elements. Like, they show child abuse, right, with Sophie's brother, and and the
that
thing
is
is, like,
true.
of course, we know that none of these characters are supposed to be like model actors, but I'm guessing, like, in a modern day American comedy, if one were to write a scene like that, there would have to be, like, the comeuppance would have to be very severe and very, like, explicit and very quick. And
I think, like, American comedy is like can be just as, like, offensive at times. And, like, the Americans have tried to remake Peep Show, like,
that is right.
I think even more than one occasion.
I know of three. I know of three, and I think
like,
I have
why
watched.
don't you just watch the original? Why does everything have to be made? Why do you have to
you watched
remake
any of
everything
the?
on your terms? I haven't dared to watch any of them.
There is one that I watched. I watched, I think, a couple of pilots, and they're all on YouTube, obviously. There was one that I watched that was tolerable, but it was very American. And like for example, the only example that I can think of where the cross-Atlantic translation happened quite well would be The Office, and The Office US feels extremely American, whereas The Office UK feels extremely British, and they're both funny in their own ways. So you can't exactly copy something expecting that all the sensibilities would also somehow miraculously translate into something palatable. For example, they tried doing this to The Inbetweeners, and it was a complete disaster. But yeah, there was one attempt that I didn't find like that I didn't find intolerable. I forgot. I mean, I don't know what you would have to type into YouTube to get it, but it was decent. But the thing is, like, no, very few American shows have this POV approach where nothing is fancy, everything is very run down and very, and like, even if you look at The Flat, where they live. What was it called? Apollo House.
Yeah.
Uh, like whenever there are shots of the insides of the flat looks reasonably decent, right? Like it doesn't look so bad. But there are scenes where Mark is entering the apartment. Like, remember that scene? Yes, I'm walking and reading, sweetheart. Do you have a problem with that? Like when he finds out about Elena's long time, long, long, about Elena's, what's her name, Gail.
Mm.
Like you look at the stairs, they don't exactly seem that fancy, and like there are good reasons why they, I'm guessing, decorated this set like that or chose a building like that, because there are lots of buildings in London which look like that. As in, I mean, you have maybe more experience with this. Like, uh, I have stayed at quite a few Airbnbs in London where the stair bits look very like 70s, and once you enter the flat, it looks a bit more modern.
Yeah.
So the writers were very alive to these kinds of details or these kinds of like practical realities. And my point is, an American writer probably won't be so interested in showing the stairs or showing the outsides of the flat like that. They would try to make it all seem very, like, not beautiful, like very like pleasing to the eye. Like we were talking about how many American shows end on a very positive note. Like I often cite the Big Bang Theory. So the Big Bang Theory, to my mind, is the only show about postdocs, right? So at the beginning, they're all postdocs. So as a postdoc myself, I would have hoped that I would find that show very relatable, but
Mm.
that just doesn't happen. Like the writers don't let it happen. And yeah, they try to capitalize on the geekiness and the nerdiness too much, and sometimes it works comedy wise, sometimes it doesn't. Whereas anyone who works at any kind of an office job in London, if they were like discovering Peep Show for the first time today, they would still enjoy it. I would. Don't you? Yeah, I mean, do you agree
Yeah.
with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I think American comedies often have this tendency of like not ignoring economic issues completely. Like money is never a problem. Like people
Mm.
often make the point about Friends, like the
Mm.
flat that they all
Mm.
share in Friends is like how much the rent would be on that thing. So they almost
That is
be
that's a
presumably pretty
very
well
good
off to
point.
afford it.
Very
Um,
good point.
whereas like I think money issues come up all the time, people don't they? Like
Oh yeah,
um,
all the time.
yeah, economic issues. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, maybe that is a thing that I mean, I haven't seen any of these attempted American remakes, but that's the sort of thing that maybe they would try and like skirt over or kind of
Yeah,
make it.
quite. Not just money, like also in terms of clothes. Like when Big Suze is first introduced, doesn't she say to Jeremy, like, I think you're wearing the exact same T-shirt that we're wearing when I last saw
Yeah,
you? Well, I mean, and you can see by the cleanliness or lack thereof of the flat and of the clothes that they were, like often like they aren't exactly dressed in, I mean, well, the clothes aren't maybe dirty, but it's not like they are dressed well in most cases, and that's just like a part and parcel of the universe. Whereas you're very right, in Friends, like in New York, like I know of a few people who live in New York, and the kind of rents they pay, like around $1,500 per month, and that's not nothing, obviously. And like I don't know how much you know about the Friends universe. So there's this character Joey, played by Matt LeBlanc. I think that's his name,
yeah,
Joey. Yeah. So he is supposed to be a struggling actor. Yeah. He never has any work to speak of, but he doesn't ever struggle for money.
yeah,
Like what's happening there? And there are scenes where I think, again, I'm still talking about the Friends. There are scenes where a sister of the Jennifer Aniston character Rachel turns up, and she mentions that their dad is very proud of Rachel um, because of her achievements in life, but we never get to see her at work, or we never get to see her like worrying about money or being happy
mm,
with whatever she's making. Yeah, the only yeah yeah that's a glaring negative of
yeah.
the American style of. delivering comedy. But Friends is still funny, but people can park their concerns about the uh, economic issues and be like, yeah, fine, this is funny, we can just enjoy it. That to me is the textbook definition of sitcom. Like, we are not worrying too much about why is this character wearing that,
Yeah.
how do you even have the money to buy that, but we are just focusing on why it's funny. And yeah, and also, I mean, this is maybe none of us are qualified enough to answer this. Like, do you think there is something to say about the emotional maturity or lack thereof of Mark and Jess that we see throughout the film, throughout the 9 seasons? Like, obviously, Jess is more creatively inclined, and
Mhm.
maybe as a consequence of that, whatever relationships he tries to get himself into get very uh, like, I mean, he gets very passionately involved with the girls that we see him getting involved with. Whereas with Mark, he is falling in love in 3 seconds, and then he is like pitying himself, and it's funny. So, do you think there is something to say about their contrasting backgrounds and their contrasting approach, and like the contrast in how they approach, let's say, romantic love in general?
Yeah, well, I think they're both kind of emotionally immature, but in very different ways, aren't they?
Right.
Like Jeremy is like a big child, basically. He has in a lot of ways he has a child's mind almost. He sees things in
Hmm.
very simplistic terms. Um, Mark isn't quite like that, but he's still not very like emotionally honest. Um, and he has a lot of weird sort of the kind of weird hang-ups that you might expect someone to get over by the time they're out of their teenage years. He still seems to have issues with. Um,
Like,
um, it's difficult to think of an
uh-huh.
example off the top of my head,
Like, I mean,
but I mean, like
when,
his whole attitude to women, basically,
yeah,
um, is very. I mean, Jeremy's attitude to women is very strange as well. But Mark is very has like a lot of insecurities, and he seems to like he's obsessed with the idea of finding the one, isn't he? He kind of thinks that finding the one is like his key to happiness.
yeah,
Um, but it's almost like
mhm,
he doesn't actually, but especially in the case of Sophie, it's like
yeah,
once he's in a relationship with her, it's almost like he
yeah,
doesn't actually like her, does he?
yeah,
He doesn't really have anything in common with her. They don't get on that well. But
yeah,
to him, it's not just like this sort of social
yeah,
status thing of like having a girlfriend, getting married, finding the one, and he still kind of believes that that's like what he needs to do. And it's Jeremy
yeah.
that talks him out of that, isn't it? When they're on the
I mean, he
when they're lost
tries.
on the hills at night, and he says like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to marry her. And yeah, Mark has that realization that yeah, I don't have to marry her. There are actually other people who might be more suited for me.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, the next day, she accepts his proposal, and he realizes it's checkmate, and he
Yeah.
has to,
And that's the thing as well,
he
like
has to
getting married out of embarrassment.
embarrass. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, this bit in particular, like getting married out of embarrassment, and then not divorcing ever either, because you're not the divorcing type. It would be like, if we were analyzing this even more properly, it would be extremely tempting for us to say, this is the, I don't know, let's say the British approach, let's say. But I mean, this is what I was trying to hint at earlier as well. Like, it may well be more suited for a British audience, like a comedy scene like that, or a comedy line written like that. But maybe it is more about the individual, obviously. Like, of course, not every British man thinks like that, that I'm going to stay married out of embarrassment. It's just, I mean, there's like this like nostalgic referencing of an old form of Britishness that Mark's dad epitomizes in some scenes. That is also quite funny, but maybe as a British person yourself, you look at it differently. Like, for example, whenever there is a scene where an explanation of what's going on is, oh, it's because he is British, and that could be construed as funny to someone who is not from the UK, like myself. But when you see scenes with, for example, Mark's dad, uh, when he says things like, "Can't you put a what on your woman?"
Is it a
Uh,
muzzle?
muzzle on your woman. When Dobby says, "I don't think they are traditional," as in cauliflowers. Uh, so yeah, so this bit of like, would you be in agreement with what I'm saying here? Like, it is, there is like this nostalgic referencing of an old kind of Britishness that is like in a funny way, like not in a
Yeah,
way Peter Hitchens might like, but in a funny
yeah,
way.
yeah. I mean, so a lot of Mark's attitudes and values are kind of conservative, and it seems like he's inherited a lot from his dad.
From his
We can
dad.
see that from that one episode where his dad actually appears, but also he mentions his dad a lot, and you can see that they have like a interesting
Yeah.
relationship. And yeah, maybe that's where a lot of Mark's hang-ups and neuroses come from.
Hmm.
Um,
And can't we say the same about Jeremy? Like, we don't ever. Yeah. What about Jeremy's dad? There is. I don't think there is ever any mention of his. Oh,
we
no,
know
he
that he
left.
left.
He
Yeah,
left. Sorry. Yes, of
yeah,
course, of course, of course. Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
of course. Yeah. And so there is never any mention of whether he's still alive, right?
I mean, as far as we know, he's still alive, but it seems like they haven't been in touch
Hmm.
since he left. But we do see Jeremy's mum, and
Yeah.
he's really horrible to her, isn't he? Um,
I was hoping so much that you would be late to this Zoom thing, and then I realized, what if he isn't late? Let me write
yeah,
Alex
you sent a
podcast.
message
Fucking hurry up,
even 10 minutes before I was
yeah.
supposed to be on Zoom.
Because I was hoping that he would be late so that I could write that. But then no, yeah. Also, in terms of like the traditional, since we mentioned Peter Hitchens, let's do a bit of um, like Hitchensian catharsis of what Peep Show, I don't know, represents. So we don't see the standard like family unit portrayed in a positive light that much. Like, we
Mm,
hear things of things along the lines of, what was it? Like, something went down at the Greenwich Tower. Mark's sister mentions it, right, when she first appears at the like at the pub. She what's her name? Mark's sister,
Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah, so Sarah talks about the need for her and Mark to have a chat about something
Oh yeah,
that went on
all
at
the shit that went on wherever they used to live. Yeah.
Greenwich Tower or something like that, I think was the name. I remember that because I was watching that scene when the Grenfell Tower incident happened,
Mm.
and I was like, did they say Grenfell? I mean, did she say
No,
Grenfell? It's like,
I
no,
wouldn't have
Greenwich.
thought so.
So and also with like the only scene where the whole family comes together isn't a scene where something positive happens, right? Like, um, Mark's dad insults Dobby, and then Dobby leaves, and Mark doesn't stand up to her, and like Super Hans does this joke about cockatoo, and and, and we don't get to see Jeremy's mom and dad together, but the only scene where, or the only episode where Jeremy's mom and her like partner appear together, like nothing good happens to Jeremy in that
Mm.
episode. Like, they try to not give him his money in a way, his inheritance, and also we don't see much of course, we don't see much of Alan's family. We don't see much of, yeah. So who is it that dies and uh, doesn't become a Christian before dying? Ah, what's his
Uncle
name?
Ray.
Uncle Ray, Jeremy's uncle, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So again, like the traditional family structure isn't quite holding up. Like, the sister wants to have a very humanist funeral, and there are all these Christian people who want to sort of Christianize the whole thing. One other example could be, well, the only family that did hold up a little bit was the family with Mummy. Remember the the family, because like there were no like weird, well, there were a few weird things going on there, but yes. Anyway, so I mean, Peep Show and the traditional family unit, do you think it's like a hate relationship? Like, there are almost no traditional family units that are well
Yeah.
functioning?
That
as
is
you can see.
true, isn't it? And the alternative is kind of like single adults
Yeah,
living together, as Mark and Jeremy do. And but it's not like that's kind of idolized either.
working.
It's like this great
That's right.
alternative to the old-fashioned family. It's like, their situation isn't great either. There's not really any answers there.
Yeah. So is this again something that one can connect to the cultural, well, can we say revolution, like cultural revolution, for want of a better phrase, that New Labour was trying to bring about at the turn of the last millennium?
Well, I think it's just like a reflection of like um, the way that modern capitalism totally
Mm-hmm.
individualizes everyone. I mean, it used to individualize people, but maybe down to the level of the individual family. But
Hmm.
now it's almost like individualized on the level of every single
Yeah,
individual.
like
There's
at
nothing
a
greater
very,
than the individual, not even the family. It's just, everyone's on their own, surviving as best they can.
yes, individualizing at a very, very nuclear level. So we were speaking earlier about like what if Peep Show was written in the 80s? So do
Mm.
you think this element would have been there if it was written in the 80s? Probably
That's
not, right?
interesting because Margaret Thatcher was very big on the family. She
Yeah.
said that there's no such thing as society, but she did say that there are individuals and families. So
Hmm.
maybe if it had been made in the 80s, there would have been more of a family focus. But then again, if there had been, it would have been a totally different show because like the whole essential premise of the show is that it's these two most of the time single guys living
Yeah,
together, and that's where a lot of the comedy arises, is from that living arrangement, isn't it?
that is true. That is true. Yeah, and also like in terms of the we were talking about Marx politics, like what could have been Marx's position on the political spectrum, and we also discussed Jeremy on that scale. And I'm guessing that was, and you mentioned this earlier when we were discussing this question, that that was maybe quite emblematic of a lot of people who were making like early fortunes in the early noughties. Well, not early fortunes, like we were sort of becoming rich quite fast, not
Mm.
rich, well moneyed,
Yeah,
quite
especially people
like
in finance, which is the
people in
industry that
finance.
that Mark works in, isn't it? And
Yeah,
I guess that's how
and
Alan Johnson becomes this
mhm,
super successful
mhm.
businessman.
and and again, this is the question I'm about to ask you is like you can't really draw from personal experience or personal stories because like we were all very very young back then. So do you think when this sort of a change was happening at the economic level and at the societal level, it was creating some kind of rifts between people who were becoming rich in this way and their sort of families? Like was the nuclearization of the family unit a direct consequence of these people getting rich, getting like very successful economically on the in the job market?
It's hard to say, but one thing I would say is that there is a line where in the show where Mark is talking about getting married, and he says
Mm-hmm.
something like, "Well, if only New Labour hadn't abolished the tax benefits." So
Yeah,
maybe that answers your question to some
that is
extent.
true. I've forgotten about that. Yeah, that is true. And New Labour does loom large on the first 4 or 5 seasons. Like sometimes, like sometimes quite, what's the word? Like sometimes even when the authors are not trying to like make the references very explicit, like now that you say it, I can totally see why that could have been the case. And it is quite interesting because like politics wise, like of course we all know that like the Iraq war had quite lasting, let's say, impression on the legacy of Tony Blair. And like no one can talk of Tony Blair's term as the prime minister without mentioning the Iraq war now. But there are always all these people on the left of Labour who hated Blair from the 90s. Like I remember, this is like just a politics point. Like I remember an exit poll discussion from 1990. So 92 was John Major, 90, the election before 97, 92. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, so Ken Livingston was being interviewed and Tony Blair was being interviewed on the same show. on the BBC. And Livingston really hated Blair, like in '92, like years before like 9/11 and all that. So yeah, so I'm guessing we don't see people from that end of the left spectrum on Peep Show that much. Like I would guess that almost all these people, like well, what's his name, Ben, Foss, uh, the, Mark's dad, like none of them would be um, like that much of a leftist in the sense that they want to socialize everything or
Mhm.
they want to. But yeah, having said that, like you mentioned this earlier, like Jeremy had all the traits of being like an opportunistic leftist. Like he would support everything that would give him benefits. And like towards the end, when he uh, was being given that loan by Mark, quite like surreptitiously, of course, and he was like, "Oh, this is free money," and and then when he like rats out Mark saying is this can't. What was it? Something to do with the just just some justice, some universal justice. He makes up something, and he says he can't accept that loan, and Mark ends up losing his job because of that.
Mm.
So yeah. So I mean, is that a fair analysis of Jeremy's politics?
Yeah, I mean, I
As
think he doesn't really have much in the way of politics. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I think he does. He
It's
goes
quite
for the
flippant.
like the trappings and the aesthetics of leftism without really any substance because he doesn't know enough about anything to really have any opinion. Does he? He turns off when the news comes on. He doesn't really have any understanding of anything that's going on in the world. He just has this vague sense that he's like, you know,
Hmm.
that he has the same kind of politics as all these cool musicians that he
That is
presumably
true. That is very true.
likes. Like, doesn't he say some of Moby's work is political? I think that's about the extent of his politics.
Whose work?
Moby,
Who is Moby?
um, techno producer.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Now that I think of it, like maybe, I mean, we have this discussion in India quite a lot about Bollywood. Like, is it the society that influences Bollywood, or is it the films of Bollywood that uh, influence society and can bring about societal change and all that? I am very much of the persuasion that in most cases it is the society that does its thing, and then films, TV series, books, etc., and all various kinds of art like deal with it, portray it, or like go against it and make statements. So in this case, like this thing that you just mentioned, that Jeremy didn't really have any deep understanding of world politics or any kind of politics. Like he says very flippant things like Mark supports Israel, I support Palestine, or like
Yeah, it makes it
stuff,
more fun if you pick different sides.
things like that. But the thing is, like, I think during my university days in the UK, both as a master student and then as a PhD student, I met quite a lot of people who thought they were left leaning, but if you probed them on any issue, they didn't even know the names of like
Mm.
capitals of countries or anyone. They just thought they must be left leaning because in some cases, as you said, the people they looked up to or the people they wanted to be like were left leaning. Um, so yeah, so that is quite true. And what's her name? She sang. What's her name? There was a reference to her in Lily Allen. Yeah, Lily Allen could be a nice example. Remember, there was a reference to Lily Allen in Peep Show when Jeremy and Super Hans play this game that
Yeah,
Mark sucks. You thought we had a number. It turned out to be a
what's
very bad
empty?
joke. Yeah. Uh, no. One. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is I have met a lot of people like that. So if I hadn't met these people, the point that you just made would have seemed a bit artificial to me. Like maybe it is true just in the context of Peep Show, but maybe in normal life people like that don't really exist, but they do exist. One other thing, and this is quite an esoteric point. Maybe the whole discussion is quite esoteric that we are having. So remember, like Mark in most cases happens to believe that a passion for history, like his passion for history, seems to be very genuine throughout the nine
Mm.
seasons. Like he seems to believe that if you know your history well, you can use that to get girls, you can use that to get laid. Like that scene where he talks about the Soviet occupation of not the Soviet occupation of, what was it, like the
Stalingrad.
battle Stalingrad, Stalingrad. And also like during that game that Mark that Jeremy and Superhands played, like Mark had to play the same game with someone else, and he was completely like shit at it.
Yeah.
And
And he's on
like
about
later on,
Napoleon, isn't he? He's like, oh well,
exactly he
it was about
thinks
Napoleon, and
he
yeah,
thinks in his head, like when Simon makes fun of him for being shit at that game, he's like, the internal monologue goes something like, the next time we have a quiz, it will be about Napoleon. And while you might be able to answer a few questions about Waterloo, but when I pin you down on the emperor's economic reforms, I will fuck you in the mouth. Like this belief that he knows a lot of history or a lot of facts about history, and therefore he is intellectually superior.
Hmm.
This is a very like a non-trivial thing to write into a character, I would say. So I would say I am quite passionate about history, but of course you are literally a historian. So have you met people like that who know a lot of history, like genuinely do know a lot of history, and for that reason act in a certain way when they are in social situations with other people where they have to like have conversations and things like that?
Not quite to the same extent as Mark
No.
Corrigan. But the thing with Mark is that although he does think that he knows a lot, I mean,
Mm.
he obviously does know a lot in the sense that he's probably memorized a lot of facts, but like, I don't think his historical understanding is necessarily much more than like a superficial level. So I quite like that scene where I've forgotten the character's name, but Jeremy's mum's partner, who's the former soldier, and he's talking to Mark, and Mark says, oh, I've got all the Anthony Beavers, and the guy says, oh, I find you a bit lightweight actually, and he sort of one-ups Mark on history. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
right.
Mark's historical knowledge does seem to come from like more sort of
That's a good point. That's a
like,
very good
yeah,
point.
it's more
I remember
superficial, more like popular
I
history.
literally, I mean, the last time we met, like in person in Leicester, I asked you about your thoughts on Anthony Beaver, I think, literally, for a completely different reason. Like, I think I was interested in knowing how academic historians view the works of people like Anthony Beaver and other people like, I don't know, William Dalrymple, who write for the masses. And
Mhm.
I think you said that you had a book of his on the Spanish Civil War or something,
Mm.
and you didn't quite dislike that book. Like it was a decent book, something
Yeah,
like.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't read anything by him since that book, and I think I read that when I was about 17. So, I've no
Is
idea.
he is
I
he is
don't really have any
he
opinion.
is he like a respected scholar in the like academic
Well,
circles?
I don't really know because he writes like very modern military history, like 20th century stuff, like Stalingrad, um, and I do ancient stuff, so
Hmm.
it's well outside my area.
Let me ask you. Okay.
But I mean, I do know that like um, at one point, Mark's supposed to be reading Rubicon by Tom Holland, which is a book about
hmm
the fall of the Roman Republic. And
hmm
yeah, I do think um, quite a lot of professional historians, do kind of turn their noses up at Tom Holland a bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Tom Holland, I know, but Anthony Weaver, he has been
yeah,
around
I
for
don't know about
much
Beaver.
longer.
Tom Holland,
I
I
think
do think it's like, people say, well, he didn't even do a history degree, he did an
I was gonna say. I was gonna
English
say, yeah,
degree, and yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay. Yeah, because I mean, this thing of him being passionate with history is quite a running theme throughout all the seasons. Like when he's speaking to Angus about the Greek Orthodox Church, and he's trying to, uh, like, because he likes April and Angus is married to her. There is obviously a kind of a frisson between them two. But once Angus starts talking about some actual history, he finds himself interested in
Yeah.
that, in what he's saying. And, uh, yeah, that's a decent point actually, because this thing of history books being sold as popular books, sorry, popular history books being sort of reasonably best-selling books, uh, doesn't happen in most countries. It happens a bit in the UK, but I'm not even sure it happens in other English speaking countries, like, I don't know, Australia or even the US. So, for example, so I mean, this thing makes sense in the British context, that someone who isn't exactly a history graduate uh, would read a lot of, well, like a decent amount of like popular history books,
Mm.
and consider himself like a heavyweight in like intellectually speaking. There are, I mean, I can think of some books that even I had, like some books by Peter Frankopan, called Silk Roads or something. I have no idea how well regarded or not well regarded these people are. Peter Frankopan, William Dalrymple. There was, of course, Tom Holland. I've never been interested in Anthony Beevor's work, but yeah, so people like that. Yeah, that's very interesting. And one, maybe we can also talk about this. So you and I both like did PhDs, and let's not get into why we did our PhDs, but do you think there is like the importance of formal education? What do you think Peep Show says about that? Because we see Mark did business studies, and the job he does is probably not a job where you require a lot of business studies knowledge. Like, it isn't it the kind of jobs that isn't it the kind of job where you learn on the job, and then the like you're supposed to get better at it as you learn it. And of course, Jeremy never went to university. No, Jeremy did go to university. He didn't get his degree because he never appealed
Yeah.
about, yeah. uh, and we never get to know what, I don't know, Alan studied at university, or whether Jeff, Sophie, these people ever went to university. um, so I mean, do you think like Peep Show and the events of Peep Show happen in a world where formal education is often not that important, or like a key to success?
Um, that's a difficult one. I mean, we have the whole episode about the university episode, right, where Mark stalks April back to
Mm-hmm.
Dartmouth and sort of
Mm-hmm.
sneaks into the university course.
Professor McLeish.
Professor McLeish, yeah, and yeah, that he ends up like doing the degree that he wished that he had done, doesn't he? Because he did business studies, but he wished that he'd done ancient history.
Ancient
So he's kind of
history.
living the dream a bit, and then he's rubbing shoulders with the kind of academic community that he looks up to, and he
Yeah.
gets invited to the professor's
House.
little party. And
Yeah.
I think as much as anything, though, it is like a status thing, isn't it? He wants to be he likes to think that he's better than people. He wants to be the guy writing anonymously for Professor McLeish's magazine, like
Yeah.
shitting
Yeah.
on Simon Sharma or whoever. Even though, as he kind of
Simon
admits,
Sharma. Yeah.
that's like the sort of books that he reads. He's
Yeah.
his middlebrow heroes. Yeah, and also we learn at one point that Mark was privately educated until Dad's British Aerospace shares went kaput.
When
So
kaput. Exactly. Yeah. I
yeah,
forgot about that. Yes.
so in that
Yeah.
sense,
So
that sort of education is a status thing, really, isn't it?
that is a good point. I had totally forgotten about that. Yeah. I was okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, because I mean, we were talking about the other granular details of life that Peep Show does get right. Like, it does talk a lot about money. It does talk a lot about insecurities, like financial, emotional, social, cultural, whatever. But I was just thinking that maybe in terms of education, it doesn't really talk that much. But yes, maybe not so much about university education, but there are like mentions here and there about Mark's like school education, but we don't get to know much about what Jeremy studied at. No, not studied at
I think
university,
he
but
did
like
nursing, didn't he? And he started off a career as a nurse and then gave that up because he didn't like helping people.
no, there was that, but was there something about him studying nursing at university? Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe there was. It's hard to yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and also there are like importance on education is placed in some other ways. Like, for example, Mark has this kid, Ian, I think he's called, and so there was a scene in one of the like later seasons where um, Sophie has a boyfriend, and that boyfriend has been training Ian on some things. And when Ian comes over to Mark realizes that Ian's something score like he tested Ian himself and realized that Ian is getting very clever, and he was very pleased with that. So
Yeah,
like
doesn't
in
he
his
mention like ancient Greek flashcards or something, or Chinese?
something like that, yeah. And he's very pleased with the fact that his son is uh, smart, like academically, whereas we don't get to, like from the Jeremy side, we don't get anything on these things. Okay,
Mm.
yeah, we know his sister, Mark's sister, is a lawyer. Yeah, that's a good point. Like it is a family in a way that values university degrees at least, and we, yeah. What other kinds of insecurities can we talk about that Peep Show
Do you mind if we
portrays?
take a quick break?
Yeah, yeah, we
Just
can, we
to
can.
use the bathroom. I'll
Yes,
be
okay,
back in a few minutes.
okay, no problem. Yeah, yeah, we can end soon. I was just trying to think if there were any other social issues that people, because Peep Show has been analyzed quite a lot, as you very well know. So there was this one thing that I found. It was about like most of the characters are like Southern, except let's say Dobby and Jeff,
Mm.
and like, is there something that can be said there? Or I mean, of course, like just Southern versus non-Southern doesn't really do anything, but um actually no, I mean, to my mind, it's just like, what if the like, so what? Like, you can base a character basically anywhere. There aren't exactly any, I mean, I don't think there are any, I don't think there are any like detectable class issues anywhere for that matter throughout Peep.
I think there's a
Well,
big class element with
Jeff,
Big Sue's being the like the posh um aristocratic
is there?
um
I mean, it is
character.
mentioned once, but is there, like, she is with Jeremy, and Jeremy doesn't really seem that posh.
No, Jeremy isn't. I mean, so Mark and Jeremy are basically middle class.
Yeah.
You know, as we just mentioned, Mark was privately educated, at least for a
Until
time.
his, yeah.
Yeah, Jez seems to come from a similar sort of background. Big Suze is like properly rich, and like the actor who plays her is a minor royal in real life, or is married into the royal family.
She is married into, what's her name again? Let me just.
I think it's Sophie Winkleman.
Sophie Winkleman. She is called Lady Sophie Windsor. Yeah.
There you go.
A big, thick, posh head.
And so I think there is a class element that's like always implicit there, which is maybe like not as obvious if you're not British, but there's like,
Okay.
so like, you know, as you mentioned, Jeff is a northerner. He's a Scouser from Liverpool, and he seems to be more working class. And I think there's definitely an element there, like a tension between Mark and Jez. I think Mark and Jeff rather.
Yeah.
I think there is like certainly a class dynamic to that, where I think, you know, Mark feels threatened by Jeff, while at the same time kind of looking down on him.
Yeah.
And maybe in the same way, Jeff like sort of picks on Mark because out of insecurity about Mark's perceived class background.
Yeah, like that scene where Mark tries to incentivize Jeff into hitting him is almost entirely premised upon the fact that Jeff would do that because his background in a way dictates that that would be his response. But yeah, that is a good reading, I would say. Yeah. But with Big Suze, I mean, I mean, her character is posh, yes, but how does that influence her relationship with the Mark character or the Jess character? I mean, the fact that she isn't poor isn't utilized in the writing, right?
I mean, there's a line where some of Mark's pizza and Jez says like, she's rich, she doesn't understand about not taking other people's stuff. And when Mark like almost kind of falls in love with her, there's definitely, he's conscious of the class element there, isn't he? Where he's like, could be a bit of rough on the side.
Yes. He is conscious of that, but I'm saying in terms of like the practical aspects of her dealings with Mark and Jess, there is never a situation where, oh no, now that I think of it, wasn't there like a house party, the New Year's party?
She treats them as servants, doesn't she?
Yeah. I remember seeing that scene, and I knew that she was supposed to be like this posh character, but the scene was so funny because of the other things happening in that episode, like the dick in the doorman. Yeah. Liam Kendrick in the house, wasn't it that? Who is Liam Kendrick? No idea. And someone said on Dobby Club that that there should be a spin-off for Liam Kendrick. Yeah, so, something like a glass of wine ain't that fine, and
white wine ain't that fine.
Yeah, I mean, for that matter, wasn't Johnson supposed to be like a semi-posh character as well? Like he is well moneyed, like clearly.
Well, but it's not clear if that's like if he comes from a moneyed background or if it's all like if he's self-made. I mean,
that is true.
I think it would sort of fit his character more if he was self-made, in the way that he's like the sort of the ideal Thatcherite slash Blairite
That's right.
self-made businessman.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That is. Yeah. I wouldn't have, because if you look at the kind of like when Mark briefly considers moving to Cardiff, and he meets Jeremy at that sushi place to tell him, and doesn't he literally say it out loud that Johnson had recommended that sushi place to him? So for someone to recommend a sushi place to someone, actually, yeah, the self-made playwright businessman, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I like among my friends in Manchester, I could see. I mean, actually, with people of our age, or at least in my friend circles, I have never been able to read the class element. Well, partly because I'm not from Manchester, from the UK, but everyone behaves the same way. I feel like everyone is almost as equally socially inept as the other person, like being a pure maths PhD student or whatever. So I could see by I could see that there was always like a difference in the kind of restaurants that one would suggest. Like not everyone would suggest a sushi place to their friend, for example.
Mm.
But yeah, that's uh, no, yeah. So Big Sue's. Do we get to know anything about her background? Like, why is she rich? Is it her parents that is like the cause of her
Yeah,
of the
it's implied that she's just from a very rich family.
rich family? So when she has that party at her house, uh, we don't get to see why that's like whose house is that? Like, how did that house become hers? Like, we
I
don't
think
get
that
to
is
see any of
I
that.
think that is hers. Is it the same house that her and Johnson live in at one point?
Is it? I thought it was the other house. And no,
Well,
okay.
yeah, because at one point that Johnson moves into his recession residence, doesn't he? But
Yeah,
then maybe Big Suze is still living in that nice house where they have that party on the New Year's Eve.
that's right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe also, and this is like this kind of attention to detail is also what makes like the show more relatable. Like if all the houses look the same, uh, there wouldn't be much point in like being invested in like what's going on in the show, like season by season. The only reason, well, a part of well, one of the many reasons why we enjoy how over the various seasons, like the characters' economic fortunes changed, is because these details were always paid attention to.
Mm.
Uh, so, for example, again, to pull up an analogy with the Big Bang Theory, they live in the same house throughout. Like the Sheldon character and the Leonard character, they live in the same house through all of 13 seasons. Well, they change flats, like they move to like after they get married, but we never get to see anything about um, like why they can afford the rent, how they're thinking about their finances, and that's a decent point. And also, like yeah, so more on the like going back to the class element with Jeff, isn't I mean, would you say it is? I mean, with just one character, it would be hard. It would be like it wouldn't be right to say that it is the writers who is who are portraying this one northern character in a negative light or anything. But but can we say something like that about the portrayal of Jeff and his eccentricities,
Um,
his
well,
oddities? Let's say not eccentricities. Yeah,
the thing about Jeff is like Mark despises him,
yeah.
and he does have some like legit reasons for despising him because Jeff does like tend to pick on Mark, but ultimately I don't think Jeff is any worse a person than
Then
Mark is.
Mark. Yeah, of course not.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, he's towards the end he's shown to be sort of taking on childcare responsibilities towards the child which isn't even his, Mark's child,
Mm-hmm.
when he gets back
Mm-hmm.
together with Sophie. So
Mm-hmm.
he has some redeeming qualities. This is a
Wait,
point that I've
this.
seen a lot of people make on these various
Yeah.
Facebook groups, is that Jeff is just like a normal guy, and if you think of it all from his perspective, then
Yeah.
Mark is very much the like crazy manipulative weirdo that he sort of gets involved with.
I mean, except for the fact that Jeff like makes out with Mark's girlfriend at Mark's birthday party, although whether or not she was his like girlfriend in any proper sense is debatable. No,
Yeah.
wait a second. Does at the point when the show ends, are Jeff and Sophie together?
No, I don't think they are, because right at the end,
When is the last time we see
Mark and
Sophie?
Sophie like consider getting back together in one of the
Yes,
final few
yes.
episodes, don't they?
And then he buries her in that ball pit,
Yeah.
and there is that snake, and there is April and her nephew or whatever. And no, what happens to Sophie after that? Is that the last time we see Sophie?
I think it might be.
So it's open ended. We don't see her with like in a proper relationship at the end either. Just like we don't see
No.
Mark and Jez. Right.
Now Sophie's got quite a sad arc really, because it's almost like Mark kind of destroys her. She starts off as like this quite happy, cheerful character.
Yes.
And then she has the relationship with Mark, and then after that she sort of goes off the rails a bit, doesn't she? Becomes a bit of an alcoholic. And yeah, that's what almost marrying Mark Corrigan does. Well, actually marrying Mark Corrigan.
And also like often where like writers tend to portray motherhood as like a not a redeeming quality. I want to say something like a calming effect. Not even a calming effect. Like we don't get to see Sophie becoming a better person, or Sophie suddenly having better fortunes in all senses uh, from the point she becomes a mother. We don't see that. Like she continues having a shit life, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, she keeps on pushing Mark to get a stable job, and Mark is considering all kinds of weird things as like job opportunities, right? Like uh, but we get to see her family, like her dad, her mom, like they come. I mean, not exactly from money, but what's the word? Like they are a bit old-fashioned.
I think they are quite well off. Like they're sort of comfortable farmers, aren't they?
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, farmers, but yeah, not exactly poor. Yeah, but I was gonna say, so from the wait a second, the child gets born in which season? Season 8, 7,
I think it's 7.
7. Yeah, I mean this is so counterintuitive because for almost half of the show, Mark is not working at JLB, and for almost all of the time when he is getting together with Dobby, he's not working at JLB, and for almost all of the time when he's getting together with Dobby, he has a child. And like when you think of the show, you don't exactly think these things. You think, well, maybe he was like a free spirit, not a free spirit, like he didn't have children. And also with Dobby, do we get to see how her economic fortunes change over time? Like she takes work, she starts working at this tech job after JLB crashes, right? Like
Yeah,
Mark pays her a
and
visit.
she inherits a substantial amount of money from Gerard.
Really?
Yeah.
They say that?
Yeah. When she says, Gerard left me this bit of money and I feel very free, and maybe that's what allows her to like make this drastic change and move off to New York. So in the end, Gerard does have the last laugh and gets his revenge on Mark.
Yeah. Okay, I don't remember. I don't remember the money bit with Gerard. Okay, I don't remember that. But this thing with Mark and Gerard, that was very fun to watch. Like the kind of rivalry they had, but also they realized both of them were too inept to succeed, and they just formed this club. And still, Mark had this complex that I am at least a few social ranks here superior,
Yeah.
and don't pull me into your dirty bathwater and all that stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that is quite true. So, are there any other characters who is actually, yeah, with what's her name, Zara?
Yeah.
Ben's, yeah, she seemed nice, but again, like like going by the flat, like that flat looked very good, but we don't know how she could afford that. But maybe it was due to Ben, maybe. Uh, yeah, no, I mean, this thing, like paying attention to the flats and paying attention to the clothes is very like is very commendable on part of the writers and the part of the writers basically. Not many shows do that. And with BoJack Horseman, which is we talked about BoJack Horseman earlier. Like, of course, it's an animated show that don't really have to do exactly this. But I can't think of any show where they pay attention. I can't. Have you seen the UK Office?
Yeah.
I mean, do they have any dealings with like characters characters losing their savings or becoming poor all of a sudden? It didn't go on for that many seasons, right? It's just a
Have
couple
you
of
seen
seasons.
it?
I think I watched 1 or 2 episodes many years ago.
Right. Well, basically, spoiler alert, I guess, but it doesn't really matter that much. David Brent loses his job in the end.
Right.
And deservedly so, because he doesn't do any work. And he ends up like touring around making celebrity guest appearances at nightclubs and also being a traveling salesman. So
right.
Yeah, in that sense, you can see that. I guess that affects him economically. Right. But yeah, again, apart from that, I think it's maybe the difference with like pre-recession, pre-2008 television. I remember watching a YouTube video about this topic, about how there's a lot of films and TV shows in the 90s and I guess into the early 2000s, which are set in offices, and because it's like, you know, a time of near to full employment where a lot of people had these office jobs, and there's lots of stuff about people's dissatisfaction at working these office jobs, but the issue is never like economic hardship. It's more like lack of fulfillment. You have a stable job and income, but it's not making you happy.
I see.
Whereas like post 2008 crash, I think maybe TV shows are more likely to touch on those issues of you know, economic struggle.
Yeah, like in films, in American films, I have like the scene of like the main male character or the main female character for that matter being fired from a job and them leaving the building with all of their important documents and, you know, like things in a cardboard box. Like that scene is very common, but I can't think of things like that, scenes like that in popular American TV shows. In films, yes. Have you seen the film Up in the Air?
No.
Yeah, so Up in the Air is an excellent film in this genre. You should definitely watch it. So it's a film about, I mean, this has nothing to do with Peep Show, but I'll just mention it. It's a film about these group of people who get hired by various companies who have to fire loads of employees like in one go on many occasions. And they need someone who can sort of break the news to them in an amicable way. And so it's about these two people basically. George Clooney plays one of the characters, and Anna Kendrick plays the young sidekick. And they are always traveling all over the US, going to various companies and telling people that the company are asking them to sort of deal with, that those people are not going to have their jobs anymore. And it's a very interesting premise for a film. I think it was even nominated for Best Picture in 2010, I think. The film came out in 2009. The nomination, I'm sure, came in 2010. So yeah, so I have seen this thing in films quite a lot, but not so much in TV shows. Is there anything, do you think there, and maybe we can end with this question, like we can stop recording after this question. Do you think there's anything particular about like British comedies or British culture in general that make it possible for comedies even to deal with economic hardship so spot on, in such a spot on way? Like they're not ashamed to tell the viewers that these people don't have any money right now. And
yeah, I think Stephen Fry said that the difference between American comedy and British comedy is that in American comedy, by and large, the main characters are like you know, successful. Let's say that they, you know, things will go wrong for them, but you know, as we were alluding to earlier, things tend to work out in the end, and the comedy comes from them like having a witty remark to every situation, like a snappy comeback or a wisecrack. Whereas, British comedy characters tend to be failures much more.
Right.
And the humor comes from, we're more like laughing at the characters rather than with the characters. And I forgot what your question was actually.
The question was if there's anything particular about British culture in general that makes it easier for comedy writers to deal with economic hardship in a spot-on way.
Yeah,
Not in a spot-on. What do I mean? Like to deal with economic hardship very explicitly.
Right. Yeah. So I think that those differences between the styles of comedy across the Atlantic probably reflects a broader cultural difference as well, in the way that Americans traditionally are a lot more positive and upbeat, and they have the American dream that they believe in, and they believe they're the best country in the world, and everything's ultimately going to turn out good for them. Whereas in Britain, we don't necessarily have that kind of optimism. We're much more pessimistic and cynical, which is reflected in the comedy.
And that's the thing. I think this pessimism is probably there everywhere. Like, I don't think like the average American male of our age is any more optimistic than the average, I don't know, non-American male. I think
that is probably true. Yeah, that is probably true. But just like in terms of broad stereotypes, of cultural differences, there is some truth in that.
And also the people who are producing these shows or writing these shows now, they're not in their 20s. They're probably in their 40s or in their 50s. So when they were in their 20s, things were obviously different back then. And Stephen Fry said this, or Stephen Fry. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I know which video you're talking about. Yeah, if it was Stephen Frears, I would have been a bit surprised. But yeah, sure. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, thanks. I think I'll stop recording and then I can speak with you for a couple of minutes.
Okay, no problem.